Welcome, everybody. Those of you who haven't been here with me, my name is Michael, and it's our Zen class or meditation for Monday night. Welcome to anybody who's joining us online as well. Is there anybody joining us for the first time? Right on. Everybody, any questions about just general sitting, the meditation? Okay, so what we're going to do is just going to sit for 20-25 minutes. And then we can facilitate a discussion, or I can share a few thoughts, and then we can sit again. We're just going to get comfortable. If you're sitting on a cushion, just move to the front of the cushion. And then, you just want to have your back straight. Not so straight you're making an effort, but straight. So it's always in Zen. It's always, not trying too hard, but you're trying. And we're just going to focus on our breathing. And that's all we do. We just breathe in, focus on our breath, and we breathe out. As those distractions come from our day, we're just going to breathe. And they're just going to keep coming, and we're going to keep breathing. And that's the practice. And whatever feelings come up, whether good, what feels like could be good or bad, they'll eventually pass. And that's the practice. And eventually, if we sit, we're consistent, then when we're in the present moment throughout our day, those same feelings will pass as well, in the same way they pass when we sit. So that's that. It's always so nice to meditate in this hall with a group of people. I was, I didn't really have much on my mind tonight, really, but I was thinking about how easy it is to get distracted from the simple practices throughout our day that help alleviate our suffering or dukkha. And I was thinking about how natural it is for us to be in a state of suffering, in terms of just, how we've conditioned ourselves throughout our lives. It's almost like sometimes I don't think about it. I'm just so much on autopilot, and it's like, suffering has just become a state I can be really used to. And so I always come back to the idea of awareness. I probably, for people who come, I say this a lot, but I think for me it's really important, is just awareness. And there's times I feel like I have to do something, and it's the exact opposite. Buddhism and practicing Buddhism, whether it's Zen or anything, isn't about adding anything. It's about removing, and it's about being aware and seeing our suffering, witnessing that suffering and sitting with that suffering. The key is to not react to that suffering, or the conditions that we put ourselves in throughout the day. And so many situations throughout the day, individuals, people that we're in relationships with can trigger that. And so just having the awareness to sit with our suffering, and I mean, that just is such an important part of the way I personally see this practice. And I just thought I would ask if anybody wants to share. If nobody does, that's okay too. But if people had any observations of their own. I mean, Master Dogen, a Zen master a long time ago, said to study the self is to know the self, and to know the self is to let go of body and mind, meaning you let go of the self, you let go of your suffering, and all those states. So the idea that we have to know ourselves, and we have to know and understand the causes of our suffering, and be aware with that and sit with that. The longer we sit with that in meditation and throughout our day, when we want to react to some feeling or something we're having, and then eventually the idea would be that lessens the less we react. If you ever stop trying to quit coffee or something, you get headaches, or you go through withdrawals, and then it gets better. But I just thought that if anybody had any thoughts of their own throughout their own week, things that they realized maybe you struggled with, or things that came up for you.
Yeah, I can share. I think on that note, I think a lot about the paradox of being a part of something with the concept of no self, and then at the same time, the more I've been practicing meditation, the more kind I've become to myself, and also the more in tune I've become with myself. And I've almost started to see kind of like the distractions and like the sufferings that come up in my mind more as something that it's almost like my inner self is like trying to tell me or trying to express. And a lot of times I either need to sit with it and experience it and learn something about myself, or it kind of points somewhere else. If that makes sense.
Yeah, one of the things there's somebody who used to teach a class here, and I just remember he said, you start from where you are. And when I heard that, it just opened the door for me to be more compassionate to myself. Because it's so easy. There's another phrase, you don't, compare your insides to somebody else's outsides. Don't compare yourself to someone, because we really don't know what other people are experiencing. I mean, I know that when I live my life, most of it, a lot of it is a show. It's like it's good work. You have to be someone. If you manage people, you can't show yourself, and lots of factors like that. So I guess what I love coming here, because it's truly who I am and who I want to be. That's why in Zen, sitting is so important, because this is our true Buddha nature in terms of our sitting and meditating. But I think it's crucial, and I agree with you, to be compassionate towards ourselves, because there's like thoughts I'll have, and be like, where did that come from? Who is that? Like why should I even be coming here? And it's just like, I feel terrible. And I was actually telling that to somebody, and they interrupted me, and they said, all you have to do is see it, sit with it, not react to it. I guess that's, and it's just, again, it's like one of those seemingly simple things, but it's like something that you have to kind of think about and practice, and just integrate into our day as much as we can, until it becomes more natural. But yeah, it's we've lived a lifetime of building this idea of a permanent self, and attachments and ego, and it'll take a lifetime to try and separate and realize that that's completely empty, that it's non-existent. It only exists in our perception and in our suffering. But yeah, that's very true.
It's interesting how easy it is to have a thought and identify ourselves with that thought and think that we are that thought. It's really not the same thing at all.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
I was reading just recently. I was reading a book, or I was reading it. It's more on probably Theravada or Mahayana Buddhism based, but it's really digging into what breaks down into suffering. One of the things I really like about Zen is that it kind of simplifies it, and we get the essence of it, because there's like in a lot of it, there's a lot of lists, and then more lists and more lists, and it's like it's really a lot to soak in, and I think like you kind of lose the essence of what we were trying to do to begin with, and then you're just stuck with a bunch of knowledge that's not. The other night I was reading something, and I wanted to meditate, and I said, well, I'll just read this book, and I read the book and I didn't meditate because I was tired, So what would have mattered more was that I sat and meditated, But the thing is, Zen really kind of distills to the essence of what we do every day to practice, but when we, in breaking down what suffering is, and clinging and aversion, because it's an absolutely every single thing I'll just speak for myself, but I think generally it's in absolutely every single thing that we do every day, every thought, and of just clinging to something we want, pushing away something we don't want, and the power of clinging to beliefs. This idea that you just cling to a process of doing something for no other reason than to do it. There's no other reason than that, and it just defines us in a way that creates more suffering. And so I realize for me, it's like I'm going to have those opinions, I'm going to have those feelings, and I'm going to want to think I'm right, but I just will keep it to myself until I actually don't feel so strongly about it anymore. But it's in everything, and I guess that's kind of the point. I mean, it's in. I mean, if we really stop and think about it, it's like every thought I have, everything I do. It's like, what is the motivation behind it? And I, so much of it is just based on selfishness, but I think the thing I try to remember that keeps me going is just I don't have to do anything. I just have to see it and not react. It's okay. We're going to feel it. We can't extinguish the way this reaction. It's very programmed. We can't extinguish that. It's always going to be there. We can sit for the rest of the time.
The question?
Yeah, of course.
You talked about clinging.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by clinging?
So a big part of dukkha or suffering, is the idea of permanence. So real important teaching in Buddhism is impermanence, that nothing is ever going to be the same. Everything always changes, and things arise and they fall. So within the arising and the falling, there's this middle part, and it could be a feeling, an emotion, an experience, and a lot of times it could be something that we don't want to let go of. You were attached to the feeling of that experience, and we know it's going to end. It's like, it was going to end, but we attached to that. So like, I think in our minds, it's like we're so attached to this feeling this way and this outcome, we're clinging to it. We don't want to let go of it. And I think from there, becomes greed too. It's like the three poisons, greed, anger / aversion, or ignorance. Because what are we willing to do to hold on to that, to keep that? And that's where this kind of idea of greed can stem from in terms of doing unwholesome acts that potentially harm ourselves or other people in some way or form, whether they know it or not, or it. And so that's what we're clinging to. And then aversion is where we are putting all this energy into averting something we don't want to experience. I always kind of think about like when I've gone on vacation and I have to go back to work. It's like I need antidepressants. It's just so sad. But that's the arising and the falling. It's like I want to stay on vacation. I want to go back to that hotel. I don't want to think about all the things I don't want to do at home. But there's a million different examples of that. But the crazy thing is like it's in every single thing we do every day, in every decision. It's in everything. And that's like, there's an overwhelming aspect of it, potentially, because that's the idea of like of studying the self, to know the self, is to understand, in this in the second noble truth, the causes of suffering. And so we understand that there's like these like there's all these things we're talking about, that cause our suffering, but it's in everything we do. It's in every day. And so it's being aware of that. And it's just saying, hey, like, this is happening. I'm feeling this way. I'm not going to react to that, but I really feel this way. And that's okay. So clinging and aversion is a really big source of suffering, and it won't stop being a source of suffering, but it can lessen.
In other words, the desire is not fulfilled.
Yes, and that's another way to put it. I mean, it's like desire as well. I mean, there, It-
Let's say I want to go to the park and I go to the park. And I fulfill the desire. So there's no clinging.
That's true. For that moment, you've maybe fulfilled the desire, but what comes after that desire?
The question is, and where is my mind?
Mhm.
The next step.
Right, because there's going to be something else that you want. I always think of the example of if you're ever angry or frustrated or irritated, and then something bigger and more irritating and more frustrating comes along, then all of a sudden that is more important than the other thing that you were angry and frustrated at. So there's always going to be another desire, and the aspect of if, in terms of the bodhisattva path and enlightenment, if you look at enlightenment in terms of being a momentary thing, it's not a state of being where you've extinguished everything else. It's the self, all those things will always be there. Dogen talks about it like it's like the moon. If you only see the part of the moon that's lit up, there's still the other part of the moon that's not being illuminated. It's still there. So it will always be there, but is to not live in all that constant desire of always wanting something. And there are times that we can experience that, and I think we could all maybe attest to that. I would imagine it's in some point, like we could say, in this moment, I don't want anything. I'm content to be in this present moment. And there's things happening all around me. And oftentimes things in another state of mind that I'd be in would irritate me and elicit a reaction, or I'd want to react to that. And I'm not reacting to that. Maybe you're driving and somebody cuts you off and you're like, whatever, I don't care. It's just small things like that. So that happens. We can experience that. So, and that's the thing. It's like when we sit and meditate, it's the core of the practice. And it kind of goes to in zazen, the meaning of that is that it's not just sitting. It's practicing Zen is about practicing in every moment of your life and having that awareness. That's zazen. It never stops. Just sitting is a part of it. And it's, again, it is, we express our Buddha nature in everything that we do, or we express a lack of that in everything we do. But sitting is very important. And as I believe it was Shunryu Suzuki said, if I want to get to know someone, I won't watch them talking to someone. I'll watch them staring at a wall. So that's our Buddha nature.
I think there's a bit of an untangling also between wants and needs and getting those confused with one another. Like when you mentioned going to the park, like kind of need to go to the park, like,
Right?
get fresh air, you need exercise, you need to sort of change up your environment. But if you go to the park and you're like, oh, I wish I had a skateboard to skateboard around, like, is that really the best option for you? Is that something that you need versus something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what is so interesting is the role that intention plays in our practice. When you really look at karma and break it down, it's like you could do something that's just really horrible, and that would create like karmic energy, in an unwholesome or negative way. But then there's things that happen that you didn't have the intention to do, but it happened. So then there's less of a karmic effect on that because you didn't have the intention of doing that. And I think it's sort of the same aspect in what you just said. It's like, there are needs and wants. And so clearly, desiring something and going and stealing it from someone is very different from going, needing and wanting and desiring groceries. And those two things are going to have very different karmic effects if you really want to, that matters. But so the role of intention is very, very important to kind of consider as well. Anyway, let's see for the last 10 minutes or so, 15, 12 minutes. right, everybody. So happy all of you came out tonight. Meredith, our host, something to read.
Hi, everybody. I'm tonight's host, Meredith. We opened our Ravon Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night, we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway of the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and just bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. I'm going to close the windows so you don't have to do that. Thank you for being here. We wish you well. We hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. There's Mark. Cool. Mark's watching.
Mark. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark. How you doing? I didn't see you there. Sorry. Here we go. And